Welcome, everyone, to the very first episode of the Inside Distance podcast here on the Fight Bananas YouTube channel. I am your host, GK, the Fight Analyst. Before we get into the bets and breakdowns of all these fights, I'll give you a little background of myself if you don't know who I am. My name is Garret Kerman. I've been a MMA handicapper for the last 5+ years. I've been cashing in about 250, 275 units over the last 5 years. So that's a pretty good steady of 40 units per year, which is pretty good in this very volatile sport. And I'm probably one of the only MMA handicappers that really bases their picks and bets on the numbers. I'm very stats and numbers oriented here. So you're going to get a very unique, different side of betting aspect on my podcast here. So we're going to be doing this every single week. I know in the next week or so, we have 3 fights. So you'll be getting 3 fight predictions and bets and podcasts and all that good stuff. So we got a lot of content moving forward here on the Fight Bananas YouTube channel. So I'm very excited about that. So with that said, let's get right down to it. We're going to start with the prelims here, which is a absolutely stacked card, and I can't believe we're really getting this after what's been going on in this world. I hope everybody's staying safe out there, staying inside. But man, fights are back, and I'm super excited. I've been waiting for this, itching to get back to it, breaking down some fights and cashing these bets. So first off, we have Ryan Spann taking on Sam Alvey. Ryan Spann right now is a -410 favorite, absolutely heavy favorite here, and the comeback on Sam Alvey is +330. So right there, right off the bat, you're giving Ryan Spann an 80.39% chance of winning this fight based on the betting odds alone, which is kind of crazy. I know Ryan Spann is 3-0 in his last 3, so he's been looking great as of late. Sam Alvey has not. I believe he's 1-2 in his last 3. He's actually 0-3. He lost his last 3 fights, so he's on the wrong swing of his career. Spann is 3-0 in his only 3 fights in the UFC, 5-0 in his last 5. So he's been he's looking promising. He's got a massive 4-inch reach advantage here, 3-inch height as well over Sam Alvey. If we look more into the numbers, pretty much Spann, it beats him everywhere as far as striking goes. He outlands him 3.26 per minute to Sam Alvey's 3.05 per minute. He also throws more at 7.58 strikes per minute, and he lands at a 43% clip. So, that plus his defense is 52%. He's only absorbing 2.54 strikes at every minute. So, the line is rightfully so. In my opinion, I do believe that Ryan Spann gets the win here. I don't think it's worth betting him at -410. He's a decent parlayable piece, but I will not lay the juice on Ryan Spann at -410. I like props. I'm very big on props, and I really like Ryan Spann by knockout or TKO at +170. So I think that's pretty decent value given that Sam Alvey has lost by knockout in 2 of his last 3. So his chin's been tested, and I think it's been cracked, and Sam Alvey's on the downswing of his career and probably going to be one of his last fights inside the UFC octagon. So I definitely like Ryan Spann here. He's probably going to get the win. And if you're trying to bet on this fight, the only way I think is taking Ryan Spann by prop. And the prop that I like is him by a knockout at +170. Moving on, we have in the featherweight division, actually, I believe the bantamweight division. You have Bryce Mitchell taking on Charles Rosa. Right now, Bryce Mitchell is sitting at a -155 favorite, and the comeback on Charles Rosa is +135. So, with that said, you have Bryce Mitchell getting a 60.78% implied win probability based on the betting line. So you're giving him a 60% chance of getting the W here, which is, I believe that's the right line. I think it's a little bit closer than that. I would give it maybe like around a 55% chance of Bryce really winning this fight. So I don't know. This is a really back and forth fight because if you really look and dig deeper into the stats, you see the clear advantages for both fighters. You see that Charles Rosa is the much better striker. He's outlanding Bryce Mitchell 3.79 strikes per minute to Mitchell's 1.78, but you know that Mitchell is basically a grappler first, and his striking is just pretty much sufficient just so he can get in close and really take you to the mat. But Charles Rosa throws a lot more strikes on the feet than Mitchell by like a massive amount. You're talking 10.53 per minute to Mitchell's 3.56. So I feel like this really depends on if Rosa can defend the takedowns that Mitchell is going to try to attempt in this fight. I don't think Rosa really wants to get into grappling exchanges with Mitchell. I think he's sufficient, and serviceable on the mat. He's got good jiu-jitsu, as you saw against Manny Bermudez. So, but I think Rosa's clear path to victory is to get this fight in the feet. He's got the much crisper boxing out of the two. And as you see in the numbers, he's outlanding him by a good margin. You talk about 2-1 on the feet, 2-1 striking ratio there. But yeah, if you look into the grappling, Charles Rosa doesn't defend takedowns, quite well. He's only defending takedowns at a 61% clip, I believe. No, he's defending takedowns only at a 47% clip, guys. 47%. I know that Mitchell doesn't have the greatest entries and the best wrestling, but the way that he attempts his takedowns, he attempts 6.25 takedowns per 15 minutes. So, he's really hunting for a single or a double or, just trying to drag you to the mat. So it's really going to be interesting to see how well Mitchell is able to get this fight to the mat. And we know that Mitchell tends to gas later in his fight. So if Rosa can take one of the first two rounds, I think the third round is where Rosa will be able to really just take off and really dominate. So if he's able to get in rounds one or two, I think Rosa can really squeak out a decision here and get round three, because we know how Mitchell fights towards the ends of his fights. He's quite gassed. So yeah, if I'm leaning towards a way, I see value on Rosa by decision at plus 240. I believe. Rosa by decision at plus 240. I think that has a lot of value if he could keep this fight standing. I think his jiu-jitsu is good enough for Rosa to be able to defend the takedowns. So if he's able to defend the takedowns and just get back up, defend the takedowns and defend the submissions, if he's able to get back up, I think he should have a clear advantage on the feet. And like I said, Mitchell gasses out towards the end of the fights. Rosa could take advantage there. So that's why I got there. Rosa by decision, plus 240. I like that more value than plus 135 on Rosa. Next up, we have in the welterweight division, Vicente Luque opens up at a minus 275 favorite, and the comeback Nico Price is plus 235. That gives Vicente Luque a 73.33% chance of winning this fight due to the implied odds. I don't think that should be. I think this fight is a lot closer, more of a 50-50 than the odds show, which is kind of insane. I know Price tends to, get into wars, and his chin's been cracked multiple times. And I know Luque won their first encounter years and years ago, but I think Price has gotten a lot better since then, and the only two people that he's really lost to, who I think are better than Vicente Luque, is Razak Al Hassan and Jeff Neal, who I think both would beat Luque. So it's not like Luque's been beating world beaters like Bam, Bam and other people like that. Derek Krantz as well on short notice. So it's not like he's been beating anybody great. Mike Perry, I think Price will take on and beat as well. So majority of the people that Luque beat, I think Price would be able to beat as well. So I think it's a very, very evenly matched fight. especially since, these two both have, fight-ending power. But I think Price hits a lot harder. And if you dig deep into the stats, I know Vicente definitely outlands Price pretty heavily. 5.18 strikes per minute to Price's 3.06, and he is much more accurate as well. 53% of his strikes are landing compared to Price's 34%. But then when you get into the defense of Luque, that's where it matters. If you saw in the Perry fight and saw in the Thompson fight, he gets hit a lot. And you know that Price hits much harder than Perry and much harder than Thompson. So if Price can land, which I think he will be able to because of the fact that Luque loves to get into firefights, he faces 10.47 strikes per minute. So that means he loves to brawl and he's in there and it's all action. But he also absorbs 5.34 per minute as well. So if you're absorbing over 5 strikes per minute to Price will knock you out. So if you're giving me Price at plus 265, that's absurd. And then this is where the super value comes in. I wouldn't even bet Price money line because I don't see him winning by submission and I don't see him winning a decision. So if he's gonna win, it's going to be by knockout. So if you want to bet this fight, I will take Price by knockout at plus 365. That's an amazing value there because I feel like that's his only path to victory, and that's the point of the path to victory that he wants. I met him one time at a seminar here in Miami, Florida, in Doral, at United Martial Arts. Great guy, but he's always looking for the finish, and he's told that straight up. He's looking for the bonus. He's looking for the finish. So he's not going to go in there and try to fight this fight to a decision. He's going in there with the intent to finish Luque, and then I know Luque is going to go in there and throw down. So between these two, I'm getting crazy plus 365 odds on Price winning by knockout. I'm taking that all day. The way that Luque gets hit, I don't think he's going to be able to take this power. And then eventually, the way he gets hit so often, his chin is eventually going to crack. And I think it's going to crack here, and we're getting good odds. I'm taking Price by knockout plus 365. Next up, we have in the middleweight division, Uriah Hall taking on Jacare Souza. Right now, Hall is a plus 105 underdog, and the comeback on Jacare is minus 125. This is a really good fight. A very, very good fight. And very evenly matched fight, in my opinion, hence why the line is so close. But I don't think it's going to be that close, to be honest with you. If we look back at Uriah Hall's recent wins, he should have lost his last fight against Antonio Carlos Jr. I think quite heavily. He lost rounds 1 and 3 quite easily. He was, he was held and controlled for almost 2 full rounds. I don't see how Hall was able to win 2 of those 3 rounds, but it is what it is. There's been some bad judging out there. And then if you go back one fight further, he fought Pavon Lewis, who was dominating him for 3 full rounds until he got a flash KO in the later portion of the 3rd round. So, kudos to him on that win, but he was absolutely dominating that fight. He was dominating in the Antonio Carlos Jr. fight as well. So if those 2 fights didn't go his way, I don't even think he'll be in the UFC right now. He'll be 0-5 in his last 5 fights. And now he's going against Jacare Souza, who is a living legend. I know he's coming off 2 losses in his last 2. And most recently, he moved up against Jan Blachowicz. Didn't look good. That was 205, though. This is back down to 185. So that Jacare is a much stronger fighter between these two. And, if you see in the stats here as we go along, you see that Hall has a big deficiency when it comes to defensive wrestling. And he showed that against Antonio Carlos Jr. and every other, grappler that he's faced. He gets taken down at will. And then Jacare, he tends to hunt for takedowns, and I think it's going to be very easy for him to get this fight to the mat. He's going to be the stronger guy. And then in an interview that I've seen on Hall, it said that he's been living inside the gym. There has been many training partners, and he's been training his wrestling one-on-one with his head coach, who's not obviously a wrestler. So um, it's really tough to take Hall here on. I think he should be 0-5 in his last 5 fights. But let's dig deeper into the stats before we move on. He's definitely landing more strikes than Souza because Souza is a grappler. 3.31 per minute compared to Souza's 2.54. But the thing is, there's a lot of volume. The volume's not that far off. Hall only throws one more strike per minute than Souza does. So it's not anything crazy. And if you watch Hall fight, he's not the one that presses. He's the one that counters. Hence why he's only throwing 6.62 strikes per minute. So he's much of a counter striker, waiting to land that final blow. And that's not going to be very good against Souza, who's going to look to push the pace, push him against the fence, and just take him down at will, which I think he'll be able to. Given the woes in Souza's striking, his defense is quite good. He only faces 4.53 strikes per minute, and he only absorbs 2.81, which is both better, way better than Hall's numbers. And he outstrikes his opponents by 8%. So he's been doing doing serviceable on the feet, and in the grappling is where he comes in full force, and he should be able to dominate. He's averaging 2.46 takedowns per 15 minutes. I know he's only successful on 38% of his takedowns, but he's also attempting 6.47, so that's a lot, and that's very, very good if you're looking to bet on Jacare here. And as you know, Hall's defensive takedown defense is really, really bad at 69%. That's going to bode very, very well for Souza here, and should be able to take him down quite easily and absolutely control him. He could get the submission, but I think Souza can get the submission here. I think we get good odds. I think it's like plus 370 for Souza by submission. It's something like that. It's very good. If you're looking to bet this fight, I'm good. I love props, and I think, I don't know. I like Souza by decision at plus 370. I think that has absolutely immense value in this fight, but I think the safe play is just taking Jacare minus 125 on the money line. He gets the win either way. I find a lot of value there, and I think I cap him way better than that. I think he's a minus 165 favorite at least. Hall hasn't really shown me much in his defensive grappling that he's going to be able to stop the takedowns and stop the submissions here. So I'm definitely taking Jacare Souza minus 125. Moving on. In the women's strawweight division, we have Carla Esparza taking on Michelle Waterson. Right now, Esparza is a minus 155 favorite, and the comeback on Waterson is plus 135. That gives us a 60.78% chance of Esparza taking the win here. I think it should be better than that, to be completely honest with you. I think she might come out here and absolutely dominate Waterson. Esparza has looked great as of late. She's put on some good wins. She's fought some tough competition. I think better competition than Waterson has fought, other than Joanna Jędrzejczyk. But if you look down the career and who Esparza's beaten versus who Waterson has faced and beaten, you take Esparza's resume all day. And I think it's not even close. You already know that Waterson's going to have the better striking of the two right off the bat. As you can see, that Waterson lands 3.35 strikes per minute compared to Esparza's 2.22. And she lands 53% of her strikes compared to Esparza's 40%. So you know that she's going to have the massive advantage on the feet. But if you look further down the line at the grappling, this is where it gets very good for Esparza. She lands 3.53 takedowns per 15 minutes. I know she's only good for 36% of her takedowns, but she's attempting 9.81. It's almost 10 takedown attempts per fight. That's insane. That's great volume, and that's great for us because if you look at Waterson, her defensive grappling is atrocious. 57% takedown defended. So you know that Esparza is going to take down Waterson, and she's going to put her on her back. I know Waterson's pretty good, in the submissions, but I don't think she's good when she's on her back. She doesn't throw up a ton of submissions off her back, doesn't throw up a ton of triangles. It's more so her being on top and getting the back. That's the only way that she really gets her submissions. So I'm really liking Esparza in this fight. I think she'd be a heavier favorite, maybe around minus 180 to minus 200 range. Yes, I'm that big on her. I think she's going to really dominate in the grappling department and cut off the cage very well, so that Waterson is pretty much just moving backwards in the entire fight and moving side to side versus circling around her. She's going to get her up against the cage and just take her down, and I think absolutely dominate her on the mat. Minus 155, good line. I don't see Esparza getting a submission or a knockout, so I'm taking Esparza pretty much at even money to win by decision at minus 105. Really like that there. I don't remember the last time that Esparza really got a finish, so I'm really liking her to win a decision here at minus 105. We get great odds there. Moving on in the heavyweight division, we have Aleksei Oleinik taking on Fabrício Werdum in his return to the octagon after his suspension from USADA. Right now, we have Fabrício Werdum minus 310 favorite, and the comeback on Oleinik is plus 255. So you're giving Werdum about a 75.61% chance of winning this fight due to the implied odds. Interesting. This is going to be a very interesting fight. It could really go. I think it could go really either two ways. I mean, Oleinik hasn't been good, against good competition. Really, he's been against Overeem got knocked out. Walt Harris, he got knocked out. Werdum can definitely knock him out, and I don't see how Oleinik is going to sub Werdum. I feel the only way that Oleinik is really going to get this win here is if he gets a flash KO. He's got some hammers. He's got an 80-inch reach. He's got that 3-inch reach advantage over Werdum. So if he does keep it standing, he does have a chance of really landing a final blow. Because Werdum has been out for over 2 years, if I'm not mistaken. So we really don't know what kind of shape Werdum is going to be in, especially on a kind of a short notice camp as well. But it's hard to really bet against Werdum here. Really, really hard to. He's a better striker. He's a better credentialed jiu-jitsu fighter as well. I think he's just pretty much better everywhere. Just down the list, if you go down all the numbers, that Werdum pretty much beats Oleinik everywhere. He outstrikes on 3.61 per minute to 3.01. He also throws more, 7.08 to 6.16. He also absorbs less, 2.45 per minute to Oleinik 3.25. Much better defense. He defends 56% of strikes against him versus Oleinik's only 46%. So big difference in the striking here, guys. And it goes down the list of the jiu-jitsu as well. So it's hard for me to bet against Werdum in this spot against Oleinik, who does tend to get finished in majority of his losses. And Werdum is just a massive step up in competition, and he's still, I feel, even at 41, 42 years of age, he's still very at the peak, and he's still very, very good at, in the heavyweight division. But betting on this fight, there's not any value in Werdum. Even inside the distance line on Werdum is minus 145. I feel if you're gonna take a side, I would take Werdum to win inside the distance at minus 145. If you want to bet it, you could throw Werdum in a parlay with Ryan Spann and then someone else later on. But I really don't like either side here, especially on the money line. It's not really feasible to bet either one of those on the money line. But if you want to take a side, if you want to take a prop in this fight, I would take Werdum to win inside the distance minus 145. Moving on. we have a great fight. I believe this is at welterweight, 170 pounds, between Anthony Showtime Pettis and Donald Cowboy Cerrone. Anthony Pettis is a minus 140 favorite, and the comeback on Donald Cerrone is plus 120. This is a fantastic fight. This is their second fight. The first fight, Pettis knocked out Cerrone in the first round. This was years ago. I think Cerrone has gotten a lot better since then. This is at 170. So Pettis is going to be a lot slower. And Pettis back then was absolutely geeked up on, steroids and all that good stuff. So this is going to be a much closer fight, especially more than the odds indicate. I think it should be a pick'em. Bring it down to plus 100. I think it's a pick'em fight. I know I see a lot of people on Pettis, but I just really can't get behind. If you look at the people that Cerrone has lost to, Tony Ferguson, Justin Gaethje, Conor McGregor, those are the last three losses. Those are all better than Pettis, all massively better strikers than Pettis. And I think Cowboy has the aggression. He has the volume to do what every striker does against Pettis that beats him, and that's to walk him down, pressure him, and get in his face. It's just like Nate Diaz did. He just walked him down, got in his face, and just made it an ugly fight. Just brawled with him, threw combinations in his face, and that's where Pettis, tends to wilter in his fights. That's when he tends to lose, is when someone's pressuring him, throwing a ton of volume, because he needs his space. He needs to use his kicks in order to land his strikes. So, let's get down to the statistics here. As you can see right off the bat, Cerrone has a massive striking advantage in terms of volume. He lands 4.33 per minute to Pettis' 2.97, and he also throws much more volume, throwing 9.41 per minute to Pettis' 6.46. So right there, then you already know that Cerrone has an advantage on the feet. The way that Cerrone loses his fights is somebody pressuring him, just like Gaethje did, just like Tony Ferguson did, just like Conor did. That's how you beat Cerrone. You can't let him get space. You can't let him get into a rhythm. You have to start fast and push forward. And that Cerrone is a slow starter in the first round. So if you have two slow starters, Cerrone is definitely going to be able to pick up the pace more than Pettis. So I definitely have Cerrone in the massive striking advantage here, I think, in terms of volume. And that then alone, I think, is really going to be able to, pull him away in this fight. And we're getting him at dog money, plus 120. I think that's fantastic odds for us. I could do even better. I'm placing a bet on him to win by decision at plus 335. I love those odds. But if you're not looking to place a prop bet on him, you got him plus 120. I think that's fantastic odds there. And I'm definitely taking him over Pettis here. I think he's got more in the tank than Pettis does. He's a much tougher fighter than Pettis is, in my opinion. And I really like that he asked John Wood to fly out to the ranch to help train him and be in his corner for this fight. So that's very good during this time that he got somebody else to come in and give him different looks and help him strategize against Anthony Pettis here. So he's really taking this seriously, and I think him not being the main event, he's gonna be able to really shine here. I think the bright lights and being on the big show against one of the biggest fighters in MMA history really got to him. So I've seen in a recent interview. So I think this being a big step down in competition over the last 3 fights or so, I think it's really going to help him. And being at 170 definitely helps him too with the weight cut and everything. So definitely have Donald Cerrone here, plus 120. Moving on, in the heavyweight division, we have Yorgan de Castro taking on Greg Hardy. Right now, de Castro is a plus 170 underdog, and the comeback on Greg Hardy is a minus 200 favorites. This is it's an interesting fight because both are fairly new to the sport. And they've shown a flash of brilliance, both of them, in the octagon. Yorgan de Castro is coming off a absolutely steamroll Justin Tafa over in Australia. I certainly didn't see that coming. I know some other handicappers did, but he really showed me a lot in that fight. He's tough as nails, and he was able to really get a knockout while moving backwards. So that was very impressive. He's got some really, really heavy leg kicks. I don't know if Greg Hardy is really going to be able to withstand that. It's going to be interesting to see how he, fares against those heavy leg kicks and the combinations. But I think Greg Hardy has shown that he has great distance management with his strikes. He's got a massive 6-inch reach advantage here. He's 5 inches taller than Yorgan as well. So, he's got the massive, size advantage. He's actually has the advantage when it comes to the striking numbers. He throws 4.77 strikes per minute, which is more than Yorgan's 3.58. He lands 49% of his strikes, so it's pretty good. He's landing half of his strikes and throwing 9.73. So he's got some good volume, and he's landing a ton of his strikes on his opponent. So I think the difference maker here is really the length and the size discrepancy between the two. I think it's going to be extremely hard for Yorgan to really get inside the pocket and really land heavy on Greg Hardy. Greg Hardy's got actually some pretty decent footwork. He's got a great jab, great 1-2. He's got some pretty good fundamentals for someone who's fairly new to the sport, and I think he's just athletically gifted that he's going to be able to outstrike, outland, and just outmaneuver Yorgan on the feet. I don't think he's going to land the killing blow because I think Yorgan's quite tough. He's a pretty tough dude. He could take a punch. So taking him minus 200, I like, but I do like to take Hardy by decision in this fight, and I think you can get that at plus 285. That's some great value. I do like Hardy a lot in this fight. I do think he wins. So if you're willing to lay the juice of minus 200, then by all means, I think that's a great play. I think it should be probably a heavier favorite, minus 250, or even better. I think this is a massive step up for Yorgan, and this is a massive step down for Greg Hardy. Going from Alexander Volkov to Yorgan to Castro is just a massive step down. You're going to one of the best heavyweights on the entire planet to a new fighter in this sport. So I like Greg Hardy here, minus 200. I'm taking it by decision at plus 285 because I love those odds. So moving forward, we got in the featherweight division, a great fight here between Jeremy Stephens and Calvin Kattar. Right now, you have Stephens at a plus 195 underdog, and the comeback on Kattar is a minus 235 favorite. You're getting 70.15% chance of Kattar coming away with a win here due to the implied odds. I think it's definitely a lot closer than the odds suggest. I think there's just a lot of bias on this line. A lot of people like Kattar and what they think that he could have beat Magomed Sharapov to beat in his last fight if it just went an extra 2 rounds. That was a 3-round main event instead of a 5-rounder, and he looked great in that 3rd round. So I think he's getting a lot of bias on the betting line because of that. I think it's a little closer than that, maybe about a minus 170, minus 180 favorite is where I really would put Kattar. So I'm really not liking the money line here, but I do think he is the better striker of the two. He is the better fighter of the two. He throws much more volume and lands much more volume than Stephens by like ton. You're talking about he lands 4.77 per minute compared to he lands 5.12 per minute compared to Stephens' 3.09 per minute. That's massive. He's landing over 2 strikes per minute more than Stephens. And then you're talking Kattar throws 12.49 strikes per minute compared to Stephens' 7.73. Okay, so he doesn't throw a lot, Stephens, and he doesn't land a lot either. He only lands 40% of his strikes. Normally, when you're around 30 to 40% of landing your strikes, you're normally throwing a lot to land a little. He's throwing a little to land a little, which is not good. If you look at Kattar, I know he only lands 41% of his strikes, but he's also throwing twice as many strikes than what he's landing. So, that compensates. Whereas Stevens, it doesn't compensate. He's got good defense. He's only absorbing 2.98 strikes per minute, but he's only facing 5.14. So if you look back in his last two fights, he got outstruck by a massive margin. And the way to beat Stevens is just by throwing a ton of volume. He tends to lose to fighters that throw volume. Yair Rodriguez and Zabit both easily outstruck him on the feet by just throwing more volume. And that's what Kattar's going to do here. As long as Kattar doesn't get caught, while Stevens is moving forward and trying to cut off the cage, as long as he doesn't move and circle into his power hand and doesn't get his lights knocked out, I think Kattar easily outstrikes him at distance, landing his jab. And he has very good crisp boxing. I think he just outlands him to a decision win quite easily on the feet. I don't think Stevens is going to get put away. He's really tough. He tends to not get knocked out a ton. I mean, the last person to knock him out was Jose Aldo a few years ago. Aldo still has power. I don't care what anybody says. So that's not something to really think as a bad or negative as far as the chin goes for Stevens, because he went toe-to-toe with Zabit and Yair, and he was fine. So I think Kattar just outstrikes him at distance. Lands his jab, keeps him at bay, and avoids the power of Stevens. And we're getting Kattar by decision at plus 110, so I really like those odds there. If you guys haven't noticed already, I really do love decision props. I cash on those a ton. Actually, one of my favorite prop parlays that I've won, I took Zhang, Zhang Wali by decision, parlay with Israel Adesanya over Romero by decision, and that gave me plus 950 odds just for those two alone. So I do love decision props because my thought process is you have two trained professional fighters. It's really tough for one of them to make another man not get knocked out cold or tap out, because they're trying to do it to the other person as well. So I feel like it's just two stalemates. Majority of the time, you're getting a decision win than you're getting a knockout. It just by the numbers, I believe the numbers are around 55%, or between 55 and 60% of the time. There's a decision over there being a finish. So moving forward. In the heavyweight division, we have a massive fight between Francis Ngannou and Yair Rozenstruik. That's a amazing barn burner of fight for however long it lasts. Right now, you have Ngannou as a minus 275 favorite, and the comeback on Rozenstruik is a plus 235 underdog. Right now, they're giving Ngannou a 73.33% chance of winning this fight due to the implied odds. Both these guys have knockout power, one punch knockout power, but I think Ngannou is the more refined striker. I know Rozenstruik has an extensive kickboxing record with a bunch of knockouts, like a ton of knockouts, but I feel like in MMA, it's completely different. If you look in his last fight, Rozenstruik was getting outstruck for the entirety of the 5 rounds by Overeem, who Ngannou pretty much knocked into another realm. I know Rozenstruik got the knockout, but it was the last seconds of the fight that he got the knockout, when Reem was pretty much tired and just, I guess, letting his guard down like he normally does. I think Ngannou's going to put a pace and a pressure on Rozenstruik that he's not going to be able to stay at distance. You're talking, I know they're the same size as far as height, but as far as like muscle mass and length, Ngannou all day. He's got an 83-inch reach, which is 5-inch reach advantage over Rozenstruik, which is ridiculous. He's got massive power. I believe all of his wins, except for one, is by knockout. Last 3 wins, all by knockout within the first round. So, I mean, this is a barn burner. Obviously, I don't like taking Ngannou at minus 275 because of the fact that Rozenstruik definitely has power to really end this fight. It's probably the hardest puncher that Ngannou has faced, but it's also the hardest puncher that Rozenstruik has faced as well. So as far as that goes, I really wouldn't want to take Ngannou minus 275. I mean, he's definitely parlayable. I would parlay Ngannou, Werdum, and Ryan Spann in a parlay. I think that gets you close to even money. That's a pretty good parlay there. I'm giving that to you guys right now. But yeah, as far as this fight goes, I think it's going to be very, very close. The striking numbers are quite close as well. And in this kind of fight, you really don't need to dig deep into the numbers because of the fact that these two are just going to go in there and try to land at will and just throw heavy strikes. So whoever lands first is pretty much the one that's really going to get the knockout here, because I do feel this is definitely going to end rather quickly. I probably would take the under 1.5 rounds in this fight. I think it's a minus 175 around that, under 1.5 rounds. This fight is definitely not going to go long. I don't see it going a full 1.5 rounds. I really like that play on this fight. And they can even take Ngannou to inside the distance at minus 142, which is not bad either. But yeah, moneyline, definitely not the way to go on Ngannou. If you want, you could parlay him. You could parlay him with Ryan Spann and Werdum to get around plus money odds, I believe. And you could also take him inside the distance at minus 142. Now we get into our last two fights on the card. We have in the co-main event Henry Cejudo taking on Dominick Cruz. Cejudo is a minus 220 favorite in the comeback, and Dominick Cruz is plus 180. Cejudo, man, I have doubted him over his last two fights, because I took him to beat Demetrius at plus 440 odds. Yes, that was one of my favorite wins of my career. I took Henry Cejudo to beat Demetrius Mighty Mouse Johnson at plus 440. That was a great bet. I know some people are saying, oh, he didn't win, this and that, but my bank account definitely won there. So, but yeah, last two fights, I definitely was against him in TJ Dillashaw and Moraes, and he absolutely dominated both of those two. I was extremely surprised how well he really progressed between Mighty Mouse Johnson to TJ Dillashaw to Marlon Moraes. He progressed a ton, and he's in his prime. He's, I think, only 33 years old, which is around prime MMA years, which is kind of crazy to say, but that's around everybody's prime when they're the best at their peak. And if you've seen recent pictures of Cejudo, he looks absolutely like a monster. And that 12-week transformation at Neuroforce 1 out there in Arizona, man, that dude looks ripped. He looks ready to go, and he's fired up. And I don't see Cruz being the one to really dethrone him, especially coming off a 4-year layoff, multiple knee surgeries during that time. He's been commentating more than I think he's been training, so I don't see Cruz really being able to do much other than trying to just run around and stick and move, and that's about it. But Cejudo has been great at, when he's pushing the pace. When someone's pushing the pace against him, that's when it kind of throws him off. But when he's the one dictating the pace, he's the one that's pushing forward, he's the one that's being the aggressor, that's when he's dangerous. Because if you saw, he was timid in the first round against Moraes. Moraes was the one pushing forward. Moraes was the one that was really getting in his face. And he really was like, okay, he was getting hit a lot. His leg kicks were bothering him really, really bad. So the second round started off the same way, but then he cracked Moraes a little bit, made him go back. And that's when Cejudo started, the tides were turning, and he started pushing forward and really started landing heavy, heavy blows to Moraes and eventually ending him. So I really do think Cejudo has a chance to beat Cruz in a convincing fashion. I think he outstrikes him. If you look at the numbers here, he lands better than Cruz. He lands more strikes than Cruz. He lands his 3.82 per minute compared to Cruz's 3.53. But where Cruz, doesn't land a ton, but he throws a lot of volume, throws 11.39 compared to Cejudo's 8.68. But you look at the massive discrepancy in the striking accuracy. Cejudo lands 44% of his strikes, where Cruz is only landing 31%. So that he has to throw a ton to land a little for Cruz. So that's not really great. You would think coming from this, this footwork and how great he's looked over his time as a striker. But if you look at the numbers, it's not as great as you think. But that's not even where he's going to have his advantage. Where he's going to have his advantage is with his wrestling. Cejudo, he's an Olympic gold medalist wrestler, and he's arguably the best wrestler that Cruz has and is going to face in his career. Period, bar none. He's not going to be able to take down Cejudo. So the 3.17 takedowns per 15 minutes that Cruz normally gets per fight. I don't think he's going to get that. So that takes that aspect completely out of the game for Cruz. So if you take that out, that Cejudo is going to be able to just march forward with no will whatsoever because he knows Cruz doesn't have the power to really stop him. He doesn't. Cruz just doesn't KO people. He's just looking to outpoint you, outsmart you, outmaneuver you to win a decision and out-cardio you. But Cejudo has great cardio. He's got great wrestling. And he's got great striking. I just don't see Cruz coming back on a 4-year layoff and be the one to dethrone Cejudo in his prime. If it's going to be anybody, it's either going to be Aljamain Sterling or Peter Yan. Those are only two people that I see beating Cejudo, and maybe Corey Sandhagen. Those three are the only three that are going to be able to dethrone Cejudo at 135, and it's not going to be Cruz. It's not going to be Jose Aldo either. It's going to be one of those three. And I'm taking Cejudo. I'm taking him on the money line minus 220. I'm taking him by decision. I believe it's plus 140 as well. So I'm all in on Cejudo. I really do like him in this spot here. And I think he's going to, stay the champion. Until one of those three step up, he's going to be the champion. If you gave him Aldo, I'm taking Cejudo against Aldo as well. He's very good, and I know the cringe thing that he does. Everybody does it, to get publicity, but he's a damn good fighter. No matter what you say, that guy can fight. That dude is a great fighter, and I'm a fan. Even with the cringe he's got, I'm with Triple C, and I definitely think he's gonna get this win here. So that's my pick there. Cejudo minus 220. Also taking him by decision at plus 140. Moving on to the main event of the evening for the interim lightweight championship of the world. Tony Ferguson takes on Justin Gaethje in what should be probably one of the greatest fights in MMA history. This will go down as a Hall of Fame fight. I can guarantee it. This fight is going to be absolutely bonkers for the first 3 rounds until one of these two get finished. Yes, that's only it's going to take 3 rounds. This is definitely not going to go with the full 5. The full 5 rounds. This is going to be a barn burner of a fight. I absolutely love this fight. It's good. I think it's better than Khabib versus Tony. I know we want to see Khabib versus Tony, but it's not more electrifying than this fight because these two are going to go there, stand there toe-to-toe, and just throw down. Khabib is, looking for the takedown. That's more of a technical fight than a technical fight between the two greatest lightweights on the planet, whereas this fight is just two of the most exciting strikers on the planet at 155 pounds fighting against each other. So it's going to be very, very exciting. I can't wait for this one. So let's get to it. You have Tony Ferguson as a minus 175 favorite, and the comeback on Justin Gaethje is a plus 155 underdog. Right now, you're giving Tony a 63.64% chance of winning due to the implied odds. That seems about right. I have Tony around a minus 170, minus 160 favorite here. And that's rightfully so. That sounds about right. But if we dig deeper into this fight, I think this is a very, very dangerous fight for Tony to take. Very dangerous because of the fact that Justin Gaethje has this crazy power for 155 pounds. I believe he's 22-2, and 20 of his wins or 21 of his wins are by knockout. So he's got some insane power. His last 3 wins have been by knockout, all in the first round. And he's been looking a lot better since his last fight against Dustin Poirier. His last loss against Dustin Poirier, he's been more refined in his striking. In his last 3, he's, being more patient as well. I know he's on less volume, but he's still landing over five strikes per minute. He's absorbing much less strikes. He's only absorbing around 4 strikes per minute in his last 3. He's defending 61% of his strikes that are thrown against him. So he's been looking a lot better in his last 3 wins. So his mindset's a lot different coming into these fights. Yes, he wants a knockout, but he's being more cautious, so he's not getting into firefights. And I think that's going to bode well against Ferguson, who's got great cardio. He can take a punch, even though he's been knocked down 4 times in his UFC career against much lesser of knockout opponents in Lando Venata, Michael Johnson, Abel Trujillo, people like that are knocking him down. Anthony Pettis. Gaethje has much more power than all 4 of those. So, and the last person to beat Gaethje was Dustin Poirier, and it took him over 175 strikes to finish Gaethje. 175 strikes. And we know that Poirier has much more power than Ferguson does. Much more. Ferguson, the last time he got a KO was in 2014. So he doesn't really knock out his opponents. The last 2 fights, they got TKOs against Donald Cerrone and Pettis. They couldn't make it out of the second round. One was due to a broken hand, and the other one was due to couldn't see out of his eye. So it wasn't really a knockout. It was just doctor stoppages. It is what it is. But we're talking about pure knockouts. He hasn't had one since 2014. So I think if it's going to take 175 strikes from Dustin Poirier to knock out Justin Gaethje, I think it's going to take over 200 for someone like Tony to do the same. So if that's the case, the question is, can Tony withstand the pace, the pressure, and the power that Justin possesses at 155 pounds, while having to land over 200 strikes to put him away? I don't think so. I don't think he's going to be able to land over 200 strikes without getting knocked out by Justin in the process. It's gonna be tough. If you go down and look at the numbers, you see that Justin lands much more than Tony does. He lands 8.57 strikes per minute, opposed to Tony's 5.81. He throws more volume at 15.58 strikes per minute, opposed to Tony's 12.91. He lands more at 55% of his strikes compared to Tony's 45%. But then this is where it gets a little dicey, as Tony does defend better. He only absorbs 3.75. But like I said, in the last 3, Justin Gaethje only absorbs 39% of his opponent's strikes. So that's a massive increase. That's a 7% increase than his normal total, which is 54%. So that's right around the range where Tony is at 63%. So he's gotten a lot. I'm telling you, he's gotten a lot better since his last 3, and I think it's a very, very, very dangerous fight for Tony. This is going to be it's going to be really, really upsetting if we don't get Tony versus Khabib. But it's a very, very good possibility that we don't get Tony versus Khabib, because I think Gaethje does have what it takes to finish the job that Anthony Pettis and Abel Trujillo and Michael Johnson and those types of fighters couldn't really do. So, and we're getting Justin Gaethje at plus 155 on the money line, and right now him to win by knockout, because I feel like that's the only possible path to victory. Gaethje at plus 210 for a knockout is just unheard of. I absolutely love that line. Plus 210 for Justin Gaethje to win by knockout. And all of his wins, majority except for 1, have been by knockout. So I'm rolling the dice here, and I'm taking Justin Gaethje as dog money I'm taking him to win by knockout, and we might get a new interim champion. We might get Khabib versus Justin Gaethje, which is a fantastic fight in itself as well. So, I mean, I know a lot of people on Tony and I really was in the beginning of this fight when they were fighting on April 18th because of the, very, very short notice. Wasn't training a lot for Justin. So I knew that Tony was in shape and ready to go, and Justin really wasn't. But now you give him an extra 3 weeks to prepare. He flew in Kamaru Usman. They flew in Benito Dariush. He's been training with, Judo. We're training with Neil Magny. So he's been training wrestling 24/7. He's been training his striking against lengthy fighters like Neil Magny, who has about like an 80-inch reach. He's got Kamaru Usman striking with him, who's got over 70-inch, about 76, 77-inch reach as well. So lengthy fighters. He's he's been training his ass off, and I really do think he's got what it takes to end Tony and end his 12-fight win streak. So, yeah, that's gonna be a great fight, and I really can't wait for that one. So, recapping all of this, guys, there's a lot of money to be made here over the next week and a half or so. So, we're gonna be getting in with all this. I'm gonna go down the list again to recap who I like in every fight. I like Ryan Spann. I would take him by knockout at plus 170. I like Charles Rosa. I would take him by decision at plus 240. I like Nico Price. I would take him by knockout at plus 365. I like Jacare Souza, just on the money line at minus 125. Carla Esparza, I'm taking her by decision at minus 105. Fabrício Werdum, unfortunately, I don't like the money line there. I will be taking him inside the distance at minus 145. Taking Donald Cerrone over Anthony Pettis. I like him there at plus 120. Also by decision at plus 335. Also taking Greg Hardy over Yorgan de Castro minus 200. Like him by decision as well at plus 285. Calvin Kattar, I'm taking him by decision at plus 110. Francis Ngannou to win inside the distance at minus 142. Henry Cejudo at minus 220, as well as by decision at plus 140. And then I'm taking Justin Gaethje money line plus 155 and by knockout at plus 210. So that's what I have for you guys this week on this week's episode of Inside the Distance. You guys can go and follow me on Twitter. My Twitter handle is @FightAnalyst. Also, go like my Facebook page, The Fight Analyst there, and go follow me on Instagram, The Fight Analyst. I'm here to help you guys cash in some bets. Like I said, we got a ton of fights coming up. I will have another one for you guys probably in the next couple of days or so for the May 13th event, and then another couple of days after that for the May 16th event. So I'm going to get on this, get the numbers crunching, and cash these bets for you guys. So that's what I have for you guys this week. I will talk to you guys later. I will see you guys cashing out at the ticket window. Talk to you guys later. I hope you guys have a good one. Peace.